Welcome to Margins and Mandates, the show where plays, pivots, pressure-tested leadership take center stage. I'm your host, Jeff Lortz, former operator, advisor, and founder of the Agile Operator. In this episode, I chat with Steve Martin, 4 decades software industry veteran and seasoned B2B SaaS CMO. Steve migrated into technical sales and software marketing in the mid-90s, and his extensive career has included stints at American Express, IBM, and a handful of B2B SaaS companies. He most recently served as CMO at ACT, a global CRM for SMBs. A certified Scrum Master and a fervent believer in agile methodologies, Steve sets go-to-market strategy just as readily as he drills down into the MarTech stack to uncover discrepancies and speed conversions. In this episode, Steve and I discuss the challenges of managing legacy platforms while launching a new SaaS offering. We talk about modeling pitfalls and managing expectations. We talk about go-to-market execution in a flat or declining market, and also the changing role of content and SEO in an AI world. Let's get into it. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jeff. How are you?
Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Big fan of margins and mandates. Thrilled to be here.
Excellent. I know you've got a nice place out there in Martha's Vineyard, so you're dragging yourself away from the beach for a podcast episode. That's amazing.
It's my wife's place, and she'll remind you of that. And I stay off the beach in the summer, but yes, it is a beautiful place to live.
Yeah. Are you there year round, or
Yes, yes, we are.
they call that an islander, I guess?
No, they don't accept us as they call us flatlanders or landlubbers. They have names for us.
Right, because you're not a native, I guess.
I'm just a transplant. Yeah, passing
Excellent.
through.
Excellent. Well, great. Well, let's get into it. Maybe you can start just by giving a little background on your most recent career, and some of the high points, I guess, along the way.
Yeah, I've been at this a long, long time. So most recently, I'd say the last 15 years has really been focused on SaaS companies, B2B
Hmm.
largely, some B2C, but B2B SaaS companies, that was kind of all the rage in the mid 2000s. Um, as traditional software companies made the move to SaaS and as so many SaaS companies kind of sprang up. So I had the good fortune to spend a lot of time at a lot of those places, working with some very great teams and learning a lot um, around demand generation for those kind of business models and how to run a SaaS company, right? You can't be a marketing leader in an organization like that and not learn a lot about onboarding and support and provisioning and all the systems requirements that are necessary. So, although I've been at this tech thing for decades and decades, I really feel like the last 15 years has been a different kind of education as SaaS kind of dominated the landscape.
Yeah, and so it was a big shift from enterprise software to SaaS. I think you mentioned you started out your tech career at Lotus. You're one of the original high growth enterprise software companies.
Yes, I arrived at Lotus a year after IBM bought them. So that was, yes, a big company. Lotus was a big company, 800 million in ARR, I think,
Hmm.
when IBM acquired them for 3 billion. And a lot of people questioned that decision. IBM got a lot of criticism for maybe not knowing what they were doing. But that more than paid them back in spades as we migrated our applications to some of their mid-range platforms and mainframes. And they made millions and millions off of the services from Lotus. So yeah, Lotus was a great learning experience. It was a big company with a small company feel. I
Hmm.
think hundreds of people left Lotus to start their own companies. It was just a real innovators incubator. I think if you
Hmm.
had a decent idea and you could articulate it, yes, IBM would make you go through the pricing exercises and TAM verifications and all that kind of stuff, which is just kind of good practice. But the idea always led the way, and we would find room and we would carve out space to chase down ideas. If it were adding functionality to an existing product or coming up with entirely new products for emerging markets, they were just always open to any idea. And I think that's where um, I I saw people taking chances and not being penalized for failures, and that was a real eye opener for me.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily what IBM is known for, right? So
Right.
it's
Yeah.
kind of amazing, right, that they
Yeah.
sort of left Lotus alone, right? They had a very unique culture there.
Yeah, I
And
think they were keenly aware of that, didn't want to poison the well. So I got there a year after the transaction and I stayed 5 years.
mhm,
And they were very hands-off for the most part. We did a big release of Lotus Notes around 98, 99.
mhm,
Microsoft had just done Windows 95 and they had reportedly spent $95 million on the launch. So we went to Big Blue and said, we really need 100 million just to kind of keep pace.
yeah,
And they were happy to write the check and support us. And, that meant North American television. That meant all kinds of things that
mhm,
typically software launches don't get. So, yeah, an exciting place to be. It's always good to have deep-pocketed investors who are kind of hands-off.
yeah,
That changed, obviously, over time. I think IBM is pretty much out of the software game.
yeah, yeah. I was actually part of one of their sell-offs. I was involved in a carve out of IBM's MarTech products. Actually,
Oh, okay.
it was bought by a private equity firm, and then we stood up a brand new software company with IBM's marketing assets. So that was part of their sell-off process. It was quite an interesting journey, I must say.
Yeah, well, they've been 100 and something years making a lot of pivots and decisions. I almost got sucked back in when they bought SoftLayer because I was working for a company that did some kind of cloud analytics that they thought were intriguing and thought maybe they could embed it into the SoftLayer Pro product. They were really trying to get into cloud in a way that Azure and Google had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the term sheet had they were granting us 0.001 cents per transaction. And so the ownership decided that wasn't really a good thing. But billions and billions of transactions, that might have been a really nice way to get embedded into their cloud platform and acquired possibly. So I think that was maybe a missed opportunity. But yeah, they take lefts and rights a lot, IBM.
Yeah, interesting. So juxtapose your Lotus and IBM experience against maybe your most recent experience at Act.
Um, I think Act is a CRM company, and for those who are in that CRM space, they may recognize the name from the late '80s.
Mhm.
They really invented this contact management system, which later became CRM. So obviously that paved the way for a whole bunch of companies like Salesforce and HubSpot and Zoho and Pipedrive and countless others. CRM is now kind of the first investment many companies make when they start to build out a go-to-market organization. So no longer an afterthought by any means. Um, it's hard to it's alike in the way that Lotus was a 20-year-old company facing some new market challenges. Act similarly, I think decades in the business. You've got legacy platforms, you've got customers that you've had for decades, who you need to continue to please. Um, the innovator's dilemma, right? You also need to skate to where the puck is going to be. So you're trying to come up with new products for emerging markets and the new SaaS model, which, not everybody, I think consumers are a little tired of it. We've all got 25 subscriptions. Um, and so there's more than a little market pushback. I think some people would very much like to go back to the days when you paid $1,000 and you owned that license and that was it,
Mhm.
um, rather than kind of get bled out for $39.99 a month for the rest of your life. Obviously, there are a lot of advantages to SaaS and those continual upgrades, right? It makes sense from the consumer standpoint if you're willing to get over the mental hump of paying that monthly subscription. And it's also got a ton of advantages for the provider, where I no longer need to support 15 different versions. Everybody is kind of moved up in lockstep to the current version. Um, so yes, I think Act has a similar track in that they've got entrenched customers on legacy platforms that are very happy with them. They don't see a need to upgrade. It does what I need it to do. At the same time, you're trying to attract new customers who maybe have bigger demands, more discerning customers. You want to move up market, you want to move down market, right? Your ability to move is limited by your legacy base in many cases, and I saw that at both Lotus and Act.
The moral of the story is as a marketing leader there, that that was your challenge, right? How do you break through, right? That sort of flat, sales and revenue growth situation, right? a product company, right, that has, as you point out, a big installed base, but a very varied installed base in terms of like what technology they're using today and what technology they may be using in the future. A massive amount of, someone can call it technical debt, right? To some extent, if you're maintaining a lot of those versions of software, and all of those things become kind of burdens, right, to the company, and a little bit of a drag on growth. I mean, is that something that you can identify with?
No question. I think broadly, any company who's seeking to grow revenue, you can attract new customers. You can get a little more revenue from your existing customers, and those are tracks that are both fraught with peril. So as you try to add more revenue to existing customers, you have to bring value, right? You can't just start marking things up without generating a lot of resentment in the base, which you don't want. Um, and I'm going to ignore kind of channel relationships because the direct company to customer relationship is just a little easier to analyze.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, channel conflict is a whole nother thing that I've experienced in a number of places. Um, so as you seek to bring add-ons to market, you can't call them that because it just sounds a little too self-serving, right? So this is a new feature set that we're going to bundle and provide to you for those of you who are in this space or of this size, or if you want to get into text marketing, here are some packages that you might be able to use to send promotional text messages to your customers. So these um, are great ideas for raising the average contract value without raising the price.
Mm-hmm.
You're also using it as an opportunity to circle back to the installed base and say, remember us, we're still here, we're delivering value for you. In fact, I'd love to have a conversation about this, better understand your business and how these new features might fit into that. Um, and then on the new customer acquisition side, yeah, changing gears completely, you've got to be able to appeal to new customers. So the thing that worked for you 10 or 20 or 2 years ago may not work now. The market's constantly moving. Competitors are making statements. Messaging is changing. Pain points are shifting. So uh, it's easier to sell into the base, I think, because these people know you, they trust you. This is a conversation they're willing to have. It's much harder to get net new in the door, but that's real growth, right? That's green growth. And if you get into an exit situation where an acquirer is doing diligence on you, they're going to look at revenue for these kind of qualities, right? Is it green growth? Are you selling to yourself? Are you just kind of shifting things around the table? Um, so yeah, revenue growth is tricky, period.
So tell me more about like what happened at Act, with the acquisition from private equity.
Act has had a pretty storied career of acquisition. They were owned by Sage for a long time. They were
Mm-hmm.
independent for a long time. They've been in and out of private equity hands. I think the current investors have been in there maybe 5 years. And I don't know what their kind of exit strategy is for Act, but throughout those ups and downs, I think that the team internally becomes a little wary of new investors, right? Okay, so there's some new people here, they've got some new ideas, and the company needs to be open. The culture needs to be open to the idea that, okay, we may have a shift in priorities, we may have a shift in goals. Um, it's not a bad thing to have fresh eyes come in and say, and question everything, right? I think that's probably a healthy exercise for all of us regularly. Um, yeah, I'm not sure what the future holds for ACT. I think they're in good hands. They're in with people who understand the challenge and want to do the right thing for existing customers and for the future of the company.
And as the CMO and as an operator in a private equity portfolio in a company that's been acquired, I'm imagining that the investment thesis of the last investors was based upon growth, right, and achieving some level of sustainable growth, and I'm sure they sprinkled profitability in there along the way as well,
Sure.
which may or may not already been in place. What kind of directions were they recommending, or how much sort of directional pressure, right, were you getting from the investors versus the the sort of the thoughts and collaboration of the leadership team on their own?
Well, there I definitely enjoyed. There was a symbiosis between the board, if you will, and the leadership team. So the senior leadership team was bought into the plan, and yeah, the plan is let's grow. So there are a number of ways to do that. I think I joined just as they had completed the construction of a very large kind of new SaaS offering. So they were really excited about the potential for
Mhm.
that. And that was an opportunity to kind of leave some of the legacy issues behind. Anyone who wanted to stay on the old platform, perfectly happy to have you there. But now we've got this kind of big new thing for who's next. Um, so investing in the construction of something like that takes years and millions. So I benefited from the fact that I arrived after that had all been done. And it was really about promotion of that platform and seeing how we could compete in the marketplace against more traditional SMB CRMs. So
Mhm.
HubSpot would probably be the bigger player in that space. Salesforce, yes, they have an SMB offering, but they're an enterprise play. There were some smaller players, and CRM is another one of those sectors without a moat, right? So anybody who can build a database can build a CRM. So there was a lot of new offerings popping up specific to certain technical sectors, right? There's one for sales, there's one for trucking, there's one for logistics. There's all CRMs for everything,
Mhm.
and then of course CRM by itself isn't really is kind of vertical agnostic. There's no reason that any business couldn't use a CRM. In fact, at ACT we used to say any business with a customer needs CRM.
I think so bringing a new SaaS product to market, you had existing SaaS products already. So you had a SaaS high velocity sales engine, right, that you're
That's
plugging
true.
into, I'm assuming, right? So it
Yep.
wasn't a brand new go-to-market model. You were just was a different customer profile or same one just with a better, a better tool, right, that you could position.
I think that unveiling new products, developing the new platform is an opportunity to kind of leave all the old mistakes behind
Yeah.
and embrace some of the new technologies. So MongoDBs and containers or whatever is the kind of the hot new thing that you think will deliver a better service, cheaper, faster. Um, Now making that uh, inter interplay with your existing platform is maybe not a priority because we've got our existing people over there. We're going to get the new people over here. But as soon as you do launch and you realize some people say, "Oh, I saw that you had this new platform. How come I can't use it?" If you haven't kind of built bridges there to enable data structures to move over to the new platform, then you're maybe sending the message to the installed base that we're leaving you behind.
Hmm.
We have this other thing that we think is the future, and you're not in it. I think that's a mistake, right? So again, the innovator's dilemma comes into play where you're trying to build a big thing, but you have to support the old thing. And if you want to spend months building this data bridge that 500 people might use, that might need to be an exercise that you go through in order to be able to tell a story here of migration. Um, but a shorter path to market is just to kind of build something for new people and never kind of expect them to have to move data back and forth between the platforms. So that is a lesson I've learned in a few places. I've seen it done both ways. You spend a lot of time building migration paths and nobody moves, or you don't do it. You build the shiny new thing, and all your existing customers say, "How come I can't get on that?" Um, or you end up spending thousands of hours manually moving the people who want to move, right? Getting data scientists in there to make sure that the data structures are moved over correctly because we don't really have this automated yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a morass. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of the biggest challenges I'll call of mature companies, companies that have established customer bases. If you're not innovating and introducing, new capabilities at a rapid clip, you're going to quickly be left behind. You said, it doesn't take much to become a CRM these days, and
right.
introduce, one to the market. So in a way, it's almost has to be part of your marketing and investment model. Like, what are you going to invest in this new go to market for this new product? You have to think about those things. It has to be built in. Those costs have to be built in, right?
Yeah.
To that plan.
Yeah, and once you've invested that money, you've got to commit to it, right? So If things aren't going well in the first 30 days, there's a tendency to want to push a panic button. Or a quarter or two in, you
Mm.
see that the churn profile for this new platform is a lot higher because the brand awareness wasn't there, the customer loyalty wasn't there. Your existing customers stay for years. These new customers kind of move in and out after 3 or 4 months, and then uh, that screws up the metrics. That might make investors a little nervous. Okay, what's going on here? What did you guys just build? A sieve? Like, why are people leaking out of this? Um, and then you've got to roll up your sleeves and figure out, are we pulling the wrong people into this product? Does the product have shortcomings that we could address that would keep people on longer? Is
Hmm.
this just naturally part of the way software goes, right? Your first version is not going to be the best thing there ever was.
Yeah.
So this is an iterative process. So let's just kind of suck it up and spend a year with our head down and see where we're at. Um, and that's not always something that, a month to month or quarter to quarter mentality can tolerate.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of wanted to go, right? Is a lot of these nuances that you're talking about, that are the differences between, success and, failure, right, of these initiatives, aren't necessarily that well understood, by the folks that are funding the initiative, right? I.e., your board and, some of the, folks on the investment team, because they do expect, okay, well, you got a new product, you're taking it to market, let's, see the pipeline metrics, let's see the conversions, let's see the positive outcomes, right away. And that puts the management team in a pretty tough situation, right? Managing expectations.
Yeah, and some of these are self-inflicted wounds, right? If you've created a model that sets some unrealistic expectations, like we're going to get a 12-month payback on this $4 million investment or whatever, yeah, you want to be positive and you want to convince people that this is going to do really well. But if you start to set out models and you miss early, yeah, it overpromising and under-delivering is not the way you want to go.
Yeah. And can you think of situations in which, you guys were backed into the corner, right? In sort of managing
Yeah,
expectations?
I think it seems like every year, if you're lucky, you sit down in November or October and you plan out the next year. And it's not just enough to say we're gonna do 3% better than we did last year, because that's not kind of ambitious enough.
Mhm.
And it's not detailed enough, right? The CFO wants to know how many units we're going to sell in Malaysia next August. Um, so the easiest way to address that is kind of take last year's numbers and model on that, because seasonality is baked into it. And then let's endeavor to do 5% better than we did last year. And then you just kind of massage all those numbers up 5%.
Mhm.
That is not a model making process that tends to get smiled upon. It seems like a cheap way out, and you haven't put enough thought into this. At the same time, it's absolutely impossible to predict how many units we're going to sell in Malaysia next August. That's just unreasonable. But every company spends hundreds of hours building out these models every year. And then, come the end of Q1, you're behind plan and you have no hope of catching up because the model's escaping. The escape velocity is much higher than
Mhm.
where you're at.
Yes.
So, yeah, you get underwater quickly. And then it's a question of, okay, do we restate the model? Do we just kind of acknowledge some new realities? Like, how do you put your hand up to the board and say, we overcommitted? What's the best way to fix all this? Uh, Compensation models are built on the performance of the company, so we can't just go through and kind of reforecast everything. Um, it's it, I think modeling in general does a bigger disservice to anything in software operations that I've
Mhm.
seen.
Yeah. No, I think you're telling a story that would resonate with almost anyone, right? That's ever sat on an executive team or in a go-to-market, leadership role in a software company.
And
You know,
when you do blow away the number, they say, "Well, you must have been sandbagging and you
yeah.
lowballed the number, and that's why." So you can't win.
Yeah. Well, I would much rather be accused of sandbagging than
Yes,
any other name calling.
sure.
That would be my favorite. Um, so I mean, so what do you do? Like what are some plays that you can run, right, to maintain your credibility, be aggressive, um, but when the end of Q1 comes, still have the ability to hit your plan, at the end of the year, or not maybe avoid having to take some hard right turn, right, halfway through the year?
Yeah, I think it starts with that planning process. You've really got to fight for whatever you think is sensible. So if someone's saying, listen, you have to commit to this because a competitor did it, or because the investors expect it, or because we have growing costs and therefore revenue needs to exceed those costs. You need to fight for what makes sense. So if they're asking you to do this 20% jump in January, and you know that January is your slowest time because people are just getting back from the holidays or whatever, the seasonality of your business, you need to be able to stand up and say, I can't support this. I won't sign off on it. You can't come across as a Debbie Downer, but at the same time, you've got to be able to stick to the data and say, I don't understand how we're going to just suddenly do 5x when historically we've never done that. So let's all like come back to sanity here for a second, because I don't want to commit to something that can't be done, and I don't see a way to do it. If you find yourself kind of locked into a model that you think is unreasonable or outrageous, do what you can do. Right? You've got to focus on the go-to-market fundamentals. So, are we getting the best leads we can get? Are we handling the best way we can handle them? Are we, doing the qualification? Are we onboarding correctly to keep people in the boat? Are there in-app pop-ups that we can do that would limit confusion or
Hmm.
drive people to the right places? Like, what levers can we move that kind of grease the skids, that make it easier to get in and stay in, right? Do we offer a free trial? Should we do one? How does that work? Not contest, but referral promotions. So existing customers can be your best referrers, right? I'll give you 50% off if you can give me three people who are, willing to try us
Hmm.
for 30 days. Um, and you've just got to kind of stick to your knitting, and yeah, and if 6 months out it means your bonus is blown, okay, fine, but you're doing the best job you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the environment has changed so dramatically in the demand generation world, especially, right? Where there's a lot of you're talking about some creative things, right, that you can do from a go-to-market perspective and a marketing play perspective, right, to try to drive more pipeline. But at the end of the day, the expectations are shifting more towards inbound demand generation versus people can't figure out how to do outbound anymore. So that just puts more and more pressure on the marketing team, right, to try these plays, generate the pipeline results, and at the same time, everyone's staring at your cost per lead and your marketing budget, and you've got that pressure coming in, at the same time. So, do you kind of take the tact of we're going to do this and fail fast, or um, are you more a practical planner when it comes to that?
Yeah, I'm torn about the fail fast. I get it. I understand the kind of ethos, um, but not failing at all would be ideal. So, and frequently failing fast means pulling the ripcord maybe a month before you should have.
Hmm.
So, if a digital campaign just isn't working, it's because you haven't maybe shown you haven't loaded the right assets into it. You haven't shown it to a sufficient number of people to allow the platform to optimize for the multivariate versions that you're showing to people. So you've got to be willing to take the losses early on something like go-to-market or digital performance marketing,
Yeah.
because it takes a while to get up to speed. And if you don't have an appetite for those early losses, then yes, people start complaining. Your leads are down, your costs are up. They're like, what are you doing? Um, and so one way I try to prepare people for that is to have these conversations before it starts, right? Like, it's critically important for a CMO to be connected at the head to the sales leader. Equally important, I think, a CEO, because it's my reporting relationship, but the CFO really needs to be on board. They need to understand that, look, this is how this cycle is going to move. We're not going to launch and light up the world,
Yeah.
right? You're not Apple. We can't get $1 million on day one. What we can do is this kind of stepped approach. Now, if we get to this point and we don't see the results we need, then yeah, we're going to kind of cut our losses there, because we think that will at least have been, a college try. But Yeah, it can be difficult when the question of the day is how many leads did you send over today, right? Every morning I've been asked that for 30 years.
Yeah.
And there are days where I'm thrilled to answer it because we blew the number away. And there are days when I don't sleep because I can't explain why we didn't do any leads yesterday. So there's not always easy answers. And frequently, I think marketing gets looked at as maybe the easier of the disciplines. Certainly, there's more art to sales because there's like a little more face-to-face persuasion, and some of the other disciplines within a software organization. Nobody's questioning the CFO as to how, annuities or uh, margins are being calculated, but everyone has an opinion about, last month's campaign. Um, so yeah, it's a tricky job. If it were easy, everyone would do it.
I like that attitude. Well, I will echo and raise you about 10 on the CMO's job being the hardest one on the executive team because of all those factors that you mentioned. And I think, the CFO probably is the one who understands it the least. But a lot of times the CEO doesn't really understand it as well as he should either, right? And that relationship with your CRO, you're right, is the most important one because if you're in the boat rowing together, right, then you've got a united front and explaining to everybody, how money's being spent and what the outcomes are. But if you're not, then there's just a bunch of finger pointing that
Yes.
naturally evolves when things aren't going well. I'm sure you've seen both situations.
Yeah, and mentioning the CRO, that's another like trend line that's recently come up that I'm appreciative of. I think that there was a time where these were very siloed operations, sales
Yep.
and marketing, right? There was a wall between them, marketing through leads over it, and sales did whatever sales did. And now you see a lot more of a blended approach to the go-to-market movement. And we're all looking at the same dashboards, we're all in the same meetings. SDRs and BDRs are frequently on the marketing side of the wall.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's enabled us to go a lot deeper on qualification. So where I used to send an MQL or marketing qualified lead over, the qualification, the Q was in air quotes because it's not Mickey Mouse at Gmail. I guess this person has a heartbeat. There are some intent signals here. The lead score is sufficient. So I'm going to say this is qualified, never having spoken to them.
Yep.
The SDR and BDR function living in marketing means that we can do a little bit more of that. We're not going to close them, but we're going to have a conversation around pain points. We're going to look for red flags if they're asking for multilingual support, and we know we don't do that, right? No is the second best answer I can get. Scratch them off the list. Let's move on. Rather than toss that over the wall to a sales resource, which is more expensive and more valuable, whose time is more valuable.
Yep.
So there are a lot of things in marketing that are making me positive. I'm not, totally burned out here yet. Um, there are reasons to be cheerful, and I think that's one of the kind of CRO blending this that we're all in here together.
Yeah, no, it's true. And the whole emergence of kind of the RevOps role, right? Somebody who
Yes,
kind of straddles the fence in a more, Switzerland kind of fashion, right? I think helps that as well. A lot of times, RevOps, reports directly to the CEO, right? I think that's actually a pretty good play. 'Cause,
yes,
yeah, you have someone who's kind of mediating and objectively looking at what's really happening, and it kind of thaws that, ice between, CMO and CRO if it's happening. So if there's one thing, Steve, if you would look back at your, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that things that you were doing 3 years ago, pick something that you were doing successfully 3 years ago that would never work today.
Well, I think the AI has kind of blown up SEO. So SEO is something that we spend a lot of time on, right? You want the right content, you want the right kind of. We went from keyword stuffing to high value content, and now all that content is kind of being obviated because people are no longer using Google to search. They're using ChatGPT, or they're using Google, and Google is circumventing their own search results by throwing up the AI overview kind of off to the left. So that's really changed the game around content production.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you still need to create content because people searching, you want to capitalize on intent. And I need to make videos that show how it works, and I need to make videos that show why it matters. And so content marketing hasn't gone out the door, but much of the content that was being built was being built solely to be crawled, right? So
Hmm.
every company blog, no one ever read those things, and with good reason. But they were designed so that page crawlers would read them and that I would get a sufficient organic ranking because I had 11,000 blog posts.
Yeah.
Well, now that's an utter waste of time.
Hmm.
And the entire game is shifted, and it's not entirely clear how to optimize for AI overviews yet because there are kind of so many AI players. So we're in a bit of a holding period, waiting for a leader to emerge there and for a methodology to become clear that it'll enable people to capitalize on it. But
Yeah.
if you're an SEO consultant right now, I think you need to be looking for another job.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, this is a topic that we could talk about for hours, right? Because it is fundamentally changing the game. I mean, AI is just across the board. I mean, that's just one example that
Yeah.
marketers specifically are grappling with the evolution of AI. There's others, right, as well, right? I think, again, going back to, who's got the toughest job, I think AI is probably the thing that has the most disruptive impact is on marketing, right? In a company. So the CMO's got to figure that out too.
Yes. And it can be a real thorn in your side. It can also be a real a tailwind. I've been playing around with vibe coding and just the ability to build things in days that used to take us weeks or months is kind of amazing. And agentic AI versus kind of the the generative AI that
Mm.
everyone's using to answer questions, that'll go out and do things for you. Yeah, check your email or find the best flight to Paris. But it'll also go out and crawl through your systems and move leads from here to here, or
Mm.
generate me a list of DQ reasons for the last month. It's just easier to use than kind of creating Salesforce reports, and it's exponentially faster. So yes, there are plenty of challenges presented by AI, but I think marketers will really benefit ultimately because we can do things we could never do, and we can do things we've always done, 10x faster.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great points. And you're right. It is it's, you definitely want to be on the plus side of AI, where you're driving, not being driven,
Yeah,
by
don't
the
ignore it.
opportunity.
That's my
Yeah.
advice. Anyone, do not ignore it.
Do not ignore it. Exactly. Well, listen, Steve, it's been a great chat. Love your insights. Some great experiences to share. So, thanks for jumping on the podcast. Hopefully, we can have you back in a few months and get an update on what you're working on.
Thanks, Jeff. It was a genuine pleasure.
All right. Take care.